So we're going to talk about something called M.A.W.L. M-A-W-L. So that's an acronym for Model, Assist, Watch, and Lead. So let me write it here. And can someone turn to 2 Timothy 2, verse 2 and read it loud? Just one person, go ahead and do it so everyone can hear.
Be in the presence of many witnesses. These things entrust to reliable men who will also be able to teach others.
Yeah, so what all do we see there? So that's who's talking in this passage? Paul, right? And then who's he specifically talking to? Timothy. Okay, so you have two generations there. So you have Paul and Timothy, and then what's he telling Timothy to do?
Teach reliable men and women.
So teach reliable men to do what?
To teach others.
To teach others. There's in that one passage there is 4 generations of people who are teaching these skills of how to obey God, how to follow Jesus, and then also passing them along. So we're going to get into this M.A.W.L acronym here, and it's specific to certain skills that you are teaching people, and then skills that you are learning yourself. So, and this really actually applies a lot more than just ministry or following God. I mean, even in the workplace, when it's technical skills that I'm learning at work, I actually use this quite a bit. But obviously today we're going to focus on things relating to God. So, model. So this is specifically what is it? It's when someone is first seeing something for the first time, whether that's how to start a conversation with, how to be a friend, how to start reading the Bible, how to share the gospel. So the 3 circles, or how to share your testimony, how to lead a discovery Bible study. What are some other skills that y'all can think of? I mean, a lot of them are on the wall right there. What are some other things that someone new who's come to Christ, they should start learning?
How to baptize.
How to baptize, exactly. Yeah, that's a good one.
Give and receive the Lord's Supper.
Okay, yeah, communion. Yeah. What?
411.
The 411, yeah, showing someone all the importance of some of the barriers to making disciples and how to overcome them. Right. So let's look at. I think everyone should have this sheet here, right? So let's go through at your table. Go through each one of these verses one by one. We'll take a total of about 10, 15 minutes, but go through each one and jot down specifically one who's talking and who is the one that is the trainer, or the person who is kind of giving the skill, or modeling, assisting, watching, or leaving the skill with them. And like, what does it say how to do it? Like, what's the verb? Does that make sense? And so, maybe actually before we do that, let me just describe this a little more. So, model is showing the skill. Like I'm just doing it, and the other person that I'm training is just watching me. They're just learning. They're just trying to observe. Assist is where they start trying to do it themselves, but they're not able to necessarily haven't practiced enough to be kind of on their own. So I'm assisting them in it. Watching. That's like, okay, they've mostly got it. I'm going to be there with them, but they're kind of getting on a roll. And then leaving, it's not, this is maybe some misconception. It's not leaving the person, say, all right, cool, you got it, see you later. It is, you're leaving the skill with them. And it's not just that, hey, you're all mauled up. All right, see you later, right? But this maul process goes for every different skill individually. So while they may be really confident in sharing the gospel, like say they got the 3 circles down, they practiced it a bunch, they can share it a lot, but maybe they haven't learned some of the other things. They're not confident in some others. So it's kind of a process, but we'll get into that a little bit more, but let's first discover it in these verses, all right? Does it make sense what we're supposed to do?
So we're going to say who's training and how they're modeling.
Yeah, like what's the verb there that they use? Like who does it apply to? 10 minutes or so? Is it Paul or Jesus? Jesus, okay, what is he saying? What is this? What is he saying in this passage? What's the verb? To do as I have done to you, right? Yeah, so we're look at that. So in order for them to know what that is, they had to, Jesus would have modeled it, right? He would have modeled it, and then he's not just saying, hey, I did it once, now you go do it, see you later, but he spent a lot of time with them. So there was a progression of where initially they were just watching Jesus, and then to eventually to where they were practicing to do some of these things, and we'll get that in other passages too, especially when a lot of these passages are Paul. But 1 Corinthians 4, verse 16, what does he say to do? Paul. Imitate me, right? So kind of the same thing. What about 1 Corinthians 11? Paul, right? But what does it say? Imitate me as I imitate Christ. So there's the multiple generations there where Paul was imitating Christ, and then now it's getting passed along to those whose Paul's disciples are. What about Philippians 3, verse 17?
Imitate anybody.
What is the verb? I know I had a NLT. Imitate. Okay. Mine said pattern, but yeah, pattern your lives after mine. What about Philippians 4? Okay.
Learned, received, heard, and seen.
Yeah, I had keep putting these things into practice. That's another part of the same verse. Am I on the wrong verse?
That's it?
No, that's
Is it? Okay. Yeah, keep putting these things into practice. And what were they doing again? Say that again.
learned, received, heard, or seen in Paul.
Yeah. 1 Thessalonians. Sorry, Vicky? To become the example. Yeah, so there's multiple generations there for other people, not just for them. Follow their example of faith. What's the verb in 1 Timothy 4? Oh, sorry, I skipped way ahead. Sorry. Where were we? Hebrews 13, is that where we are? 2 Thessalonians 3, okay. You ought to imitate us, right? Yes, Grace?
Yeah, I was saying he was like not being idle, so he said like don't be idle with yourselves, like working there.
Yeah, don't be idle. Right. So this takes work. This does take work. Kind of similar to what Burke was saying with his vision cast of Jesus. He didn't just take the time to relax. He took the time to engage and to teach. Hebrews 13.
Imitate the faith of the leaders.
The leaders, yeah. Imitate the faith of the leaders. Those who taught you. Follow their example, right?
My translation said, consider the way that they live, like reason within yourself the way that they think and they live, and like kind of put yourself in their shoes. Look at their habits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to be like them in those specific things. Yep. Now, what about 1 Timothy 4? Set an example. Yeah.
You don't have to be old grade.
Right. You don't have to be old. Yeah. My translation said be an example. So similar.
Well, I think it's interesting how it qualifies it with speech, conduct, love, faith, and purity.
Yep. Specific tasks. Specific skills. 1 Peter 2.
To suffer like Christ.
Yeah. To follow Christ as in his example, right? To suffer. To do good, even if it means suffering. First Peter 5.
For the elders to be an example.
right, so he's talking to the elders. He's telling them to be the example. Right? Yeah, because a lot of this, all these things relating to following Jesus, obeying his commands, abiding in him, the example that's set is so important. It's modeled, really. Jesus he's the king, right? And he's the one that modeled a lot of this stuff, and we have record of it here in his word. And all these things have been passed down directly from him through Paul and through many others that we have here today. Thankfully, we know from his word what it means to abide. Just like what Matt Gordon was talking about and everything else we've been learning. So, yeah, so what we're going to look at some quick examples of kind of what it means to, maybe some examples from at least one from here in Norfolk, a guy named Jones. Some of y'all may have met him earlier this week in the evenings, but he's someone that our church has been training, someone I've been training in a lot of these different skills that we've been learning that are here on the wall. So approaching someone for the first time, initiating either with a stranger or a coworker or wherever you go, praying for them, transitioning into the gospel, sharing your testimony, the gospel itself, follow-up, pattern of care, 411. These are just a very short list of skills, but like I mentioned earlier, abiding in Christ is a skill. Being a friend is a skill. Caring for one another who has need. But specifically for Jones, I'm going to fill out a little example of kind of where he is at, and really more so where I am at with Jones in some of these things. So I would say when it comes to this one, maybe I should have split this up into two different parts, but with regards to testimony, Jones, he's got it. I'll say he's got launched, I left him in that skill. Like the skill is with him. He knows how to share his testimony. But I guess when it comes to transitioning between, hey, it's nice to meet you, we're praying for people, how can we care for you, and then getting into some of these things, I'd say he's more like assisting. So I'm only doing this because I probably should have split that up into two columns, but that's kind of where he's at. He's confident in sharing his testimony. He's practiced it a bunch of times, but he's still, like with regards to transitioning in conversation and making things flow well. Maybe not so awkward and caring. I'm assisting him in those things. The gospel, say that skill I've left with him. He's got it. He's practiced that a bunch of times with others, in our group together where he's been learning, and then also when I go out with him and when others go out with him in the gospel, I can just say, hey, Jones, hey, go ahead and share the gospel, like after we've already gotten into a conversation, it's a good opportunity, and he can roll with it. I really don't need to help him much at all in that. Acts 2, I think that's probably still, I'm modeling that for him. I think it's been quite a while, probably maybe 3 months or so since he's seen that one specifically. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that he would be able to reproduce that without someone showing him. Pattern of care. Let's say watching him in that, and then Danny has also been doing that as well. And they had a time on Sunday nights called Fleet Church. There's a small group of folks who Danny and Maggie were kind of grouped together, and Jones was a part of that. And Jones, a number of times, has led the pattern of care in that group. So he's not 100% confident in it yet, but I'd say he can do it as we watch and maybe provide a little bit of feedback. 411, I think, is probably similar. He's probably got 80% of it. I think maybe the last portion of when maybe he would need a little help in, but it's pretty close. And then approaching and praying for someone. I want to say, like, he has a lot of enthusiasm with regards to meeting someone new and approaching them, but maybe it's going to take a little more practice to make it, I don't know, maybe a little less awkward. Put it that way. So he's doing really awesome, and this is just one example of one person in our church that we've been training. And I know I said a lot of these things I'm doing with Jones as well, but like I mentioned Danny and Zach and others, we've all been kind of building into them as a kind of a team effort. So maybe y'all would even disagree with some of these, and that's fine. But I want to get another example. Valentina, where are you at? Oh, there you are. Okay. So she's volunteered to write someone from Miami that she's been working with. So if you could, it's kind of the same way as I explained Jones, and give some examples of maybe some instances where they've been learning some things.
Yeah, so my example is my sister Michi. Don't worry guys, I got her permission to do this. So right after Link last year, I came back home and I was so encouraged to go out and share the gospel. And since a lot of people are on summer vacation, I was like, man, I need some co-laborers to go share the gospel with me on campus. So I decided to start training my sister Michi by bringing her along with me to go sharing on campus and following up with people. So that's how she learned many of these tools. And so for approaching and praying, she got that really quickly, and I first modeled it to her, assisted her, and we would take turns while we were going sharing on campus. Sometimes I would start and initiate the conversation with someone, and then the next person she would do it. And now she's able to, I've left her to do that skill on her own and model that to other people with our campus group at FIU. And then for transition and sharing her testimony, she's very confident doing that after having it modeled to her and assisting her with it. And for sharing the gospel as well, I've already left her to do that. With Acts 2, she's still learning it and getting trained on it. So I would say she's probably in assist, and she agrees with me. And then with pattern of care, she's actually already discipling other people and training other laborers in our group to follow up with people and for yellow lights and green lights. And for the 411, she's also in the step of being assisted in doing it. So we do that together, and after we do that, we just give each other feedback so that we can learn and improve our skills. So what I really love about M.A.W.L is that it's like a great guide to developing leaders and reproducing disciple makers. So I'm doing this with Michi, but Michi's already modeling to other people in the group and other girls. So it's a huge blessing. I really encourage you guys to use this during your time at Link with each other and take the skill back home, because it'll be very useful. So.
Thank you so much. And could you recognize? Thank you, Valentina. All right, so for a little bit of practice, take 3 or 4 minutes on your own and fill out this chart. Let's say if you have anyone that you've been training back at home with regards to some of these things, or even some other, you can make some additional columns. I know there's not a ton of space on the page, but you can go ahead and do that. But to circle, write someone's name, someone that you've been training, if you have anyone, and where you are with them in that process. And just circle the letter that's applicable. So that's model, assist, watch, or lead. So, and yes, Faith. If you don't have anyone yet,
then we're going to help you.
where do you think you are? Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, where are you at?
Or pray for someone.
Yeah. All right, go ahead. All right. So I'm going to wrap up here real quick, but the reason why this is so important in this order is because this is the natural process for how we learn how to do things. Like, just think about a child who is learning to speak for the first time. If you handed them a dictionary or textbooks on how to read, obviously that's ridiculous. But how do they learn how to speak? They listen. They listen to their parents, and you know that they're listening because they obviously they end up speaking the same language that the parent speaks, right? That's pretty obvious. Even the same dialect or accent. So they start learning from their parents, modeling them, and as they begin to speak certain words, the parents teach them and show them how to pronunciate certain things and form sentences. And after a while, they can form some sentences, and they might make a few mistakes. They get some correction, some feedback, and then eventually they're fully fluent in the language, and they really don't need help in learning how to speak. So this is for learning any skill, and it's important to not to skip steps, to just say, hey, I showed them the 3 circles. They should have it. They practice it back once. All right, go. You know, like we do want to commission people to go and start sharing, but we don't want to necessarily expect that they're going to be 100% fluent in sharing the gospel or whatever the skill is without feedback. That's why it's so important, as the job of a disciple maker isn't done even after you get to leaving the skill with them. So basically you continue to be a mentor in a lot of these things over time. So that's why it's important to go through this process. Any questions? Yes.
I have an example, and this kind of gets into you leave the skill, not the person. Trained Zach, and Zach was totally trained and skilled, and yet there came a point where he kind of said, you know, man, I'm not seeing what I want to see, and so he just called me up and said, hey, Bert, can we just go out? You know, it wasn't like I was thinking, oh, I need to model everything, but he just wanted to kind of go through it all again, just to kind of see if, you know, because he wasn't seeing the fruit, he was thinking God wanted to do it. You remember, I mean, and just how, one, I appreciated it, that he initiated to say, hey, yeah, I want to keep learning, but it also was just a fun thing to kind of reconnect, and though we weren't like disconnected, but this whole modeling thing, yeah, it's not a one and done. You know, it's an ongoing thing as you're developing leaders. And so just keep that in mind. Yeah. So,
Excellent. Thank you, Bert.
yeah.
And so last thing, I know since we're running short on time, didn't quite get to it, but there's a few other verses on this page. I guess you need to look those up in your own time, or on the break, or whenever you get time. So they're very similar to the ones that we looked at earlier, but even more clear with regards to which part of the process they're in. So, thank you.